Well, I'd like to welcome all of you to the program that we have for you today. We have a very exciting program in line. So I'm Don Bites. I'm a professor at Iowa State University and a member of the organizing committee. I'd like to welcome you to the summit with the title of Defining Animal Nutrition Priorities for a Healthy Society. The stated objective of our summit is on the screen, and I'd like to repeat that because it's of significance. It's to identify strengths and gaps in animal nutrition knowledge for optimal human, animal, and environmental health. Today's summit was preceded by a Fair 2012 that some folks have thought about, that remembered that it was organized by FAS, and that was organized to set research priorities for all the disciplines of animal science. Today we're going to focus on priorities in research on animal nutrition. So our procedure today is to accomplish that objective is that we will have a keynote address to initiate the conference. That will be followed by 3 talks on strengths and gaps in knowledge of animal nutrition. Then we'll have a panel discussion with the 3 speakers at the front table, and that will be followed by roundtable discussions where all of you will have a chance to help identify strengths and gaps in our animal nutrition knowledge. And the roundtable discussions, we will have a reporter and recorder at each of those tables that will collect 2 or 3 bullet points from the discussion, and we have a wrap-up person that will make a presentation then of the discussion of all of the tables. We'll finish the day with a capstone presentation. So we'll have the panel discussions, the roundtable discussions in the morning and in the afternoon, following the 3 initial talks. So we've organized this summit to have a very serious conversation about where our strengths and gaps are in animal nutrition research. The summit was organized by the National Animal Nutrition Program Committee. The National Animal Nutrition Program Committee work is supported by the Experiment Station Committee on Organization and Policy, State Agricultural Experiment Stations, and Hatch Funds. And we thank those organizations for their support of this very important work. The members of the National Animal Nutrition Program Committee are listed on the slides, and I'd like now to have all of the committee members stand and be recognized, all of you. And these folks will be helping coordinate the table discussions with all of you. So I wanted to make sure you all knew who our committee members were. So that's the organization of what we plan, and so now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. This is Dr. Catherine Woteki. She's the Undersecretary of USDA Research, Education, and Economic Mission Area, Chief Scientist of the USDA. Before the USDA position that she has now, she was Global Director of Scientific Affairs for Mars Incorporated. And then from 2002 to 2005, she was Dean of Agriculture and Professor of Human Nutrition at Iowa State University, so I can claim her as my former boss, and I'm very proud to do that. She's a very dear friend. Previous to Iowa State, she had several important positions within the USDA White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Department of Health and Human Services, Food and Nutrition Board, and the like. Many honors came her way, capped off by the membership in the Institute of Medicine. She earned her BS degree at Mary Washington College and her master's and PhD degree from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, commonly known as Virginia Tech. Dr. Woteki, thank you very much for taking time from your very busy schedule to come and speak to us this morning and open up our summit. We appreciate it very much. Let's give Dr. Woteki a welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Don, for that introduction. When I first received the invitation to speak at this summit meeting, the answer was, of course, yes. I really did want to be part of your program. And as events of the last couple of months have played out with respect to the national focus on animal research and how animals are treated, it became even more important to participate in your meeting this morning. So I thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. You all are familiar with the research that is conducted at USDA and that we sponsor at your universities. And that research is really focused on finding solutions to the unprecedented challenges that are facing agriculture both here in the United States as well as globally. And these challenges include producing enough safe and nutritious food for a growing population, adapting agricultural systems to changing climate conditions, and conserving our natural resources. This year, around the world, we're celebrating the International Year of the Soils, and that just kind of reinforces the point that we all have to be aware that the work that we're doing really needs as well to be focusing on restoring those vital natural resources that are so important to agriculture. And the Year of the Soils is really focusing on the need to restore the quarter of the world's arable land to productivity, land that's currently severely degraded, as well as maintaining soil fertility long into the future. USDA is committed to addressing what we've called the grand societal challenges of food security, food safety, improving human health and nutrition, at the same time as building the bioeconomy, and doing this in a way that's sustainable over the long term and resilient to climate change. These are the priorities in the research programs that are being done both within the intramural laboratories at the Agricultural Research Service and also that we're supporting through the programs of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and sponsoring research that's conducted at universities, colleges of veterinary medicine, and other research entities around the country. We're also very cognizant that each one of these grand challenges is actually interrelated with all of the others. And that as we're addressing these really complex and interrelated challenges, that it's going to require very multifaceted approaches to the research. So I would argue that our continued commitment to animal science research is more important now and to the world than it ever has been before. And indeed, the first sentence in a new report from the National Academy of Sciences says, reinvigorating animal agricultural research is essential to sustainably address the global challenge of food security. But how do we sustainably produce enough safe, nutritious food while we're seeing a clear convergence of many of these challenges on the horizon? They've always been interrelated, but today many of the health, food, and natural resource-related issues are coming together to create a perfect storm situation. And the connection is through agricultural systems, our primary interface with the natural environment as we work to feed ourselves. The air we breathe and the water and the food that we ingest are essential for life. Safe, nutritious food and clean, plentiful water depend on having healthy agricultural systems. This perfect storm is also intensified by changing public values related to the ethical treatment of animals, coupled with an increased disconnect between an urbanized public and farming. And these issues are playing out against a backdrop of skyrocketing global demand for meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy products. In a shrinking and interconnected world with a growing population, serious challenges to this system show up at an ever faster rate. According to the Centers for Disease Control, about 75% of recently emerging infectious diseases affecting people are diseases of animal origin, and about 60% of all of the human pathogens are zoonotic. Foods of animal origin, of course, can be vectors for transmission of these diseases. And that's why greater collaboration between human and animal health professionals is essential. USDA research plays a dual role in the protection of agriculture and public health, producing science-based answers for decision makers. We bring together expertise from animal science, veterinary medicine, food safety, nutrition, wildlife, plant sciences, economics, ecology, biotechnology, and other agricultural and health disciplines to set priorities for these research programs. And we've embraced the One Health approach, which recognizes that the health of humans is connected to the health of animals and the environment. And we're proud of the contributions our research has made both to human and to animal health, and directly to producers, to consumers, and to the environment. Two current examples of this engagement are the Global Health Security Agenda and the President's recent executive order on combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria. USDA is partnering with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of State, together with countries around the world, to launch the Global Health Security Agenda. It is an international initiative to address the problem of emerging infectious diseases. While our main goals in agriculture in the Global Health Security Agenda are to slow the spread of antimicrobial resistance, to reduce zoonotic disease transmission, establish national biosecurity systems, increase routine immunizations, strengthen national infectious disease surveillance and laboratory systems, and to develop real-time electronic reporting systems in emergency operating centers. USDA is pursuing the Global Health Security Agenda within the context of our overall mission. That mission includes developing and preserving a sustainable global food and agricultural system. In support of global health security, we're collaborating with other U.S. government agencies like Health and Human Services and the Agency for International Development, the Department of State, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Homeland Security, as well as international organizations, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the OIE, the World Organization for Animal Health. One previously mentioned major global health security challenge receiving considerable attention recently is the threat of antimicrobial resistance. There are certainly many pathways among people, animals, and the environment connecting resident bacterial populations in one population or setting to those in other populations or settings. And the One Health Working Group within USDA that's composed of scientists from the Agricultural Research Service, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, and the Food Safety and Inspection Service have worked together on this issue for many years, each performing tasks from research to monitoring to inspection that supplement but don't duplicate the efforts of the other agencies. Despite these efforts, we still have a problem with antimicrobial resistance, and there's a lot of work that remains to be done. The federal government, including the Department of Agriculture, is elevating our priority of work to combat antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The White House, late last year, issued a national strategy on combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria which outlines the steps that the federal government will take to improve prevention, detection, and control of resistant pathogens in the U.S. and worldwide. And as part of the task force for what we've been calling CARB, combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria, USDA proposes to conduct surveillance research and development, education, extension, and outreach. And we expect the President to be announcing that very specific plan in the next few days. The President's budget for 2016, which I had the opportunity yesterday morning to testify about before the House Appropriations Committee, is also a very strong statement in support of agricultural science in general and animal science in particular. The budget includes for the complete REE mission area, so that's the 4 agencies that I have oversight for, a budget request of $3.2 billion. Within that, there is a $125 million increase requested for the Competitive Grants Program, the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative. So that would increase it from $325 million, that is the level of support this year, to $450 million in 2016. This increase includes funding for antimicrobial resistance initiatives under the AFRI Food Safety Challenge area. And it also includes funding for pollinator health, bio-based feedstocks, and enhancements to other important research, education, and extension programming. The budget also requests funding for of over $200 million for construction to replace aging facilities within the Agricultural Research Service. And the budget request includes $114 million to complete and replace the facility in Georgia, Southeast Poultry Research Lab, where so much important research is done on infectious diseases of avians, including the highly pathogenic avian influenzas. So we believe that USDA research must continue to promote the health of people and animals and our environment, both here at home and globally, and to detect, to prevent, and prepare for, and to respond to emerging diseases, pandemic threats, and other issues at the human-animal ecosystem interface. Now more than ever, we need to reinforce our commitment to animal science and to conduct that research in a socially acceptable, ethical, and humane manner. A recent news report made allegations about the treatment of animals at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska, as well as about the value of the research that's done at that facility. ARS certainly does not agree with the way that the treatment of animals was portrayed in that article, and we've posted on the ARS website all of the reporters' questions as well as the detailed responses, details which were largely missing in the subsequent reporting. I think you'll find it very informative reading. For example, the allegation that MARC employees declined to assist lambs that were caught in a hailstorm neglected to mention that the storm spawned 2 tornadoes, a situation that precluded ARS staff from putting human lives at risk. The questions that the newspaper reporter posed, as well as all of those answers from ARS, can be found on our website at usda.gov. And as a result of the article, we've been cooperating with 2 separate inquiries that have unfortunately become conflated. One is regarding policies, procedures, and conditions that exist today. And the second one regarding the newspaper's allegations, which in most cases are many years and even decades old. Secretary Vilsack responded to the news report by establishing a panel of veterinarians and animal welfare experts and directing it to look into research, animal care, and not only at the Nebraska Center, but also across ARS. The well-being of animals and ARS's policies, procedures, and standards for livestock in research are what that expert panel has been investigating. And meanwhile, the Office of the Inspector General has begun a separate independent inquiry into the allegations by the newspaper. On March 9th, the panel established by the Secretary issued its draft report for public comment and focused on ARS's policies and the conditions at Clay Center. The committee has received comment from the public, both in writing as well as orally, and it's preparing its final draft of the report, which will be made public later in April. Meanwhile, inquiries by the Inspector General's office typically take several months to complete. They are actively working on investigating all of the allegations in the newspaper article, and we really welcome the work of both the expert panel and the Inspector General, and ARS has been cooperating in full. According to the draft report to the Secretary, the review panel observed healthy and well-cared-for animals without exception. The panel found no instances of animal abuse, misuse, or mistreatment. They also commented that in their experience, animals that are calm and unafraid are not animals that have been abused, and the two behaviors don't go together. The expert panel did identify some areas where improvements can be made, focusing primarily on processes and documentation associated with the role of the existing Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee and on training for employees, as well as of the IACUC members. I directed that those recommendations be implemented immediately, and ARS is moving quickly to implement the panel's recommendations, and in addition has appointed an animal welfare ombudsman. The center was portrayed in the article as only doing research to boost production efficiency in the industry. However, the center has a long history of accomplishments benefiting not only farmers and ranchers, but also consumers, the scientific community, as well as the environment. U.S. Mark research has also provided insight to benefit the welfare of animals that feed our population, including research on animal health and disease prevention, environmental management, and heat stress, key factors in agricultural production in the face of climate variability. There are many, many examples that I could give you of the contributions that have been made by the research program at Mark. On the food safety side, the hide washing tool that was developed out of their research has been adopted by about half of the industry and is one of the contributors to the major reduction in pathogens in meat over the last few decades. They've also developed more accurate tests for identifying scrapie in sheep, for example, identifying and reducing the susceptibility to ovine progressive pneumonia, as well as an immunocrat test that recognizes piglets that are not eating and therefore at risk of serious consequences, including death. So there are a lot of very positive things that have come out of the research at Mark. There are times when unwanted attention can actually be an opportunity. And we've been looking at a recent report, another one from the National Academy of Sciences, about assessing the health, environmental, and social effects of the food system that recommends a systems approach for considering agricultural research. The broad examination that we're undertaking currently of our animal research and its directions as we try to feed the new middle class that's emerging around the world can lead us to enhanced food safety, environmental stewardship, and productivity. And we at USDA are certainly committed to performing and funding research that conforms to humane and ethical standards of conduct. I believe that we have been doing that, and our further investigations that are underway are going to alert us to any shortcomings in our own compliance. But as we've been responding to this misrepresentation of USDA's practices and procedures that protect animal well-being and health, it was fortuitous that we had asked for an expert group at the National Academy of Sciences to do a study on the critical role of animal science research in food security and sustainability. I've already referenced that report, but I think that that introductory sentence to the report bears repeating. Reinvigorating animal agriculture research is essential to sustainably address the global challenge of food security. Their overarching recommendations were to develop holistic approaches to animal productivity and sustainability, including the use of inter- and transdisciplinary research collaborations involving both the public and the private sectors. Integration of economic, environmental, and social sustainability research, engagement of a broader range of disciplines within animal science research to include socioeconomic and cultural research to guide and inform animal scientists and decision makers. Ways to close the existing broad communication gap between the public on one side, researchers and the food industry on the other, and research directed to the development of global guidelines, standards, and regulations. The report recommends that this is something very important for the United States to expand our involvement in research that assists in the development of internationally harmonized standards, guidelines, and regulations related both to trade in animal products and protection of consumers of those products. And lastly, revitalization of agricultural research infrastructure in the U.S. through the planning of the research, as well as the establishment of new types of partnerships. The report speaks directly to the perfect storm confluence of challenges that I mentioned earlier, and to our concerns about animal welfare and the need for understanding and respecting societal concerns about food animal research, whether it's performed in the ARS labs or university or private sector facilities. The report also calls on agriculture researchers and practitioners to learn from the successes and the mistakes of the Green Revolution, to design and conduct even more successful research that optimizes animal protein production while minimizing environmental, social, and economic impacts. We expect that the middle-class people in the developed world are going to continue to want to eat meat from a variety of species. But in the developing world, there's also a greater demand for poultry and eggs, goats and dairy cattle as protein sources that are sustainable. Food security in this growing segment of the global population is critical and also must be sustainable, especially as climate change impacts animal survivability and health. Animal science research should address our global need to increase production efficiency while developing a lean, high-quality, health-promoting food product for consumers in socially responsible ways. And we're going to achieve this only with the diligent work of scientists at locations like Clay Center and through the research that's supported at campuses and colleges of medicine around the country. Although it's never easy to find your mission and methods being questioned, the department is unwavering in its resolve to use practices for animal health and welfare throughout our operations that meet or exceed the recognized quality practices, and at the same time to create a safe, nutritious, sustainable, competitive food supply for consumers here at home and around the world. So in closing, my challenge to you attending this summit to define animal nutrition research priorities for a healthy society is to consider the economic, environmental, and the social sustainability of farm animal production systems as an integral part of your agenda, and how you will engage the public in this process. I wish you a successful summit meeting, and I look forward to receiving what is going to be your research agenda. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woteki. We have some time for questions. Let's have some discussion now about Dr. Woteki's presentation, and then the panel discussion will be the next three speakers.
Okay.
So, Kathy, there's been a number of issues of rural and urban conflicts over agricultural issues, and one close to home to me that I think could spread through the country a bit is the state of the city of Des Moines, Iowa is suing 3 counties for nitrate pollution. Putting it very simply, runoff from farms are getting into the Raccoon River, and it's a source for the city of Des Moines, and so the city is suing all the counties for those problems. How are we going to solve such an issue? I mean, there's just example after example of urban-rural conflicts, and what's the future to all of this?
Well, I think one thing is I have to renew my subscription to the Des Moines Register because I didn't know about this suit.
Oh, okay.
But that's also a very clear example. There are many of them, from air quality related to large animal confinement operations, sewer issues where there's interfaces, urban, rural. And these are particularly the areas where we do need to have forums where the community can come together and discuss the issues and try to find solutions. One way also to address them is through our research agenda. I do believe that extension plays a valuable role in every state in providing opportunities for communities to come together, discuss what their issues are, and to make substantive plans for how to move forward. I'm also mindful that these issues of agriculture are also ones that are frequent sources of conflict, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. And again, that having within the community individuals who are skilled in bringing together groups to have a meaningful dialogue around an issue of high conflict is a very valuable asset to have. So I do think that extension can play a valuable role in communities in bringing them together. I also feel that particularly with these types of state issues, that as the Secretary has been doing on coexistence between bringing together the organic agriculture community with the IP preserved producer community with those that are growing biotech crops, in a healthy dialogue over time is a way as well to find constructive ways to move forward. So I think we have to be looking for more opportunities for that type of dialogue. And to the points that I was trying to make in my prepared remarks today, I do also feel that we within the research community also need to be paying attention to these areas of conflict, and then building into our research agendas the kinds of questions that will provide answers to whatever that specific problem is.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the audience? Yes, please. Go ahead and use the microphone.
Okay. I'm Sally Squires with Weber Shandwick, and I just was so interested in how you approached this unfavorable news article, and it's a brilliant idea to post both the questions and the answers, and I wondered what both the reporter and the news organization have said, or if they've said anything as a result of that.
Not to my knowledge, so I don't know yet.
Gary Hartnell. My question is around the overall priorities that the USDA is putting on the various aspects of agriculture, would be plant sciences, animal sciences, and the others, and looking at a U.S. agenda, or overall from a priority setting, which takes into account all of these disciplines together, having everybody sit down in the same room, determining what should be the overall U.S. priorities for the next 10 years, rather than having basically silos of each of these disciplines and then determining the funding that's needed to address those particular gaps. Is anything being done in this area?
Well, we've been particularly concerned, Dr. Ann Bartuska, my deputy, and myself, that our investment in animal science research is not commensurate with the importance of this area. And it's specifically why we asked the Academy to do the study that's very forward-looking about animal science research with a time horizon to mid-century. It was our underlying hope was that with that assessment in hand, we would be able, with the planning of the next year's research appropriations request, to build in a major new initiative in the animal sciences. So we have noticed in the various analyses we've done of the entire portfolio of intramural and extramural research that the animal sciences over this last few decades have been stagnating. The plant sciences research has received, within the limits that we have, more attention. And we think that there needs to be a rebalancing overall. So that report was a first step in that direction.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm Roger Cady from Elanco. I spent 18 years working in extension prior to going to industry 15 years ago. You mentioned extension several times, and we now live in a world, especially here in the United States, where 80% of agricultural production comes from about 20% of the owners of agriculture. And many of those owners have, their expertise has exceeded the expertise that exists in extension. And they often look to industry for help. How is USDA looking at how extension can change its mission to incorporate the mental capacity that exists in the private sector, which is still very much looked at in a discriminatory sort of way?
Well, we are very much looking for new ways to partner with the private sector. Built into the 2014 Farm Bill are actually several new mechanisms for partnering with the private sector. Actually the most prominent of them is this new Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, which was modeled on legislation that has established similar foundations for NIH and Food and Drug Administration and other federal agencies. So to your point about engaging with the private sector, certainly in support of animal science research as well as education and outreach activities, this new foundation is going to provide us mechanisms to do that, as well as provisions in the Farm Bill that deal with centers of excellence, that provide opportunities for new ways of partnering with land-grant universities, with non-land grant universities, and also for commodity organizations to work with NIFA in the development of competitive grants, projects and programs within the AFRI program. So there are a number of new ways in which NIFA is going to be able to provide opportunities for partnering with the private sector, and also for the private sector to be coming to the new foundation to say, we have ideas that we think we would like to partner with you with the universities and with the department. So that foundation is less than a year old at this point. It was authorized in February of last year. The board was appointed in July, and they've been working diligently to develop the processes and hire on some staff to begin to make that an actually operational entity. So in the very near future, you'll be seeing some programmatic initiatives coming from the foundation. But at this point, their door is open and willing to talk with companies and organizations, other foundations about opportunities for partnering.
Dr. Woteki, Bruce Knight, Strategic Conservation Solutions, on behalf of Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy today. Thank you for your keynote, and I empathize with the challenge you've been in the last couple of months. You did a great job yesterday at Approps. I know how difficult that is. We're going to spend all day on nutrition and really trying to do the priorities and the vision of where we need to be going. So from your seat and your vantage point at this point in the administration, as you look 10, 15, 20 years out on the research agenda that needs to be for the world and for the United States, what are the questions you most want this room to answer today? What are the 3 or 5 challenges on nutrition that would help USDA research portfolio if we were able to answer those today?
Good challenge, Bruce. I certainly have outlined some of them in my prepared remarks. I do think we as a community need to have our ears open and even more than that, to be engaging with society as we plot our research agenda. Big challenge there is how to do that. So we are very much in also that mode of trying to figure out organizationally how to do that engagement. So, for the broader research community, I think that is one specific question we'd like to hear from you, from the kind of research programs that you see are the directions. How do you as an animal nutrition research community engage with the public to get a sense of, are these questions, this agenda that we're developing, moving in a socially acceptable direction? So that would be one question. I would also be very much interested in this whole question of the microbiome and the interrelationships of the food animal microbiome, plant microbiome, or as they're calling it, the phytobiome, and the overall human health and environmental health that is affected or mediated through the interrelationships of these microbiomes. I think that's a really long-term question, and one in which, as you watch the literature developing, there's some really interesting and kind of stunning directions in which the microbiome current research is going. So I think from the animal nutrition perspective, how do we, with respect within that to one of our current problems, a much shorter term problem, is any insights we can gain through how do we mediate the food animal microbiome to reduce human pathogens and the potential transmission through meat and other animal products of human pathogens in the food chain. So there are some big long-term issues and one immediate question that I would certainly like to see you address.
Thanks for your presentation. Bryn Voix, University of Tennessee. You talked about taking a holistic approach and involving different disciplines. So I'm aware of the USDA NIH dual purpose, dual benefit program, which has been successful but relatively small. So what are your thoughts, or are there things in place for other trans-agency collaborative funding opportunities that would allow this type of research to proceed?
We're certainly always looking to identify other areas in which we can partner both with NIH and with other agencies that support extramural science. One of the areas that is currently receiving a lot of attention is the NSF initiative on the food, energy, water nexus. So NIFA is in active consultation, as is ARS and ERS, with the National Science Foundation, the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce, several other agencies, in defining what are the areas where jointly issued RFAs would be appropriate. So I think stay tuned on food, energy, water nexus. That's going to be an area in which we're going to continue. And as I said, Dr. Ramaswamy has discussions ongoing with NIH to try to identify additional areas of mutual interest.
Washington State and the National Animal Nutrition Program. Coming back to the interaction of animal production and environmental health, I think several of us could tell stories about our farmer friends and say, well, USDA might be here to help us, but EPA is our enemy. How are USDA and EPA working together, just like Don said, where we have these conflicts of environmental issues versus the animal production?
Well, throughout my tenure, as I've been in this job, I've done a number of roundtable discussions. Usually when I travel, we try to convene a roundtable of people in different sectors of business and the community. And the most frequent comment that I get is, can we do away with EPA? So there's a great antipathy in the rural countryside to the regulatory agency. We are at the departmental level as well as at the mission area level, so at my level, in frequent communication with EPA. There is within the EPA an individual who is designated as the liaison with agriculture, and we meet frequently to talk about what the issues are that are on EPA's regulatory agenda, and that also helps to inform some of the directions that our research programs take. So we also do, at the point of planning the research agendas, an active consultation with all of the regulatory agencies. So not only EPA, but FDA and FSIS, and those go into the development of as well as the evaluation of the food safety agenda, research as it relates to pesticides and other issues that are on the EPA agenda. So there's a mechanism in place, there's a designated individual at EPA who is our contact, and we also have within the ARS the program that Dr. Cheryl Kanikas has oversight over that relates to pesticides and provides a single contact point within ARS for the consolidation of research that has been conducted with respect to the EPA regulatory agenda, and to provide that information to EPA as the rules are being developed. So we've got a number of different contact points and touch points and regular consultations.
Well, Kathy, thank you very much for a wonderful discussion. Appreciate it very much.